Hello there, everybody. And this is Liberty.me's Free State Live with I'm Andy Criscione, and this is.
Hi, I'm Carla Gericke. Great to be here.
And we will be doing answering any questions anyone has, or if there are no questions, just doing a brief little roundup of what the Free State Project is. And so, why don't Carla? Do you just want to describe the Free State Project in a short little?
A short little blurb. Sure. So, for those of you who might not know, the Free State Project is a geo movement to try and attract 20,000 libertarians, liberty lovers, anarchists, very big tent to New Hampshire. New Hampshire was chosen for hundreds of reasons, and in fact, there's a documentary that you could look up on YouTube on our channel, Free State Project. It's an attractive place for people to live, and so we've been around for over a decade. In fact, I was looking at a report the other day from The Economist, where several years ago they were talking about liberty movements and stuff, and we are not only the only one still around from that original list, looking at different libertarian sort of movements over the past 3 or 4 decades, but also we are flourishing. So we're in the final stretch. We're about to close on the last 2,000 signers. We're about 90 Where do I start? Oh.
Oh yeah, click that, see if that works. Okay. I think we may have lost whatever fans we had though. So you're saying there's no one in the hangout right now, literally nobody. There's 11 watching. Okay, all right, keep on going.
How do we get this? Okay. If anyone can see or hear us, type something into Hangout so that I know whether I'm being insane or not. All right, so I guess we're just gonna keep running with this, although who knows. Thank you to those of you who did join us tonight. So Free State Project, we're really close to reaching the end of this rope, end of this sort of 20,000, and then the really fun stuff is going to start. So as I mentioned, we have different activists working on different things depending on what they're passionate about. So by way of example, tonight there is a giant Uber protest in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is out on the seacoast. It's a really lovely area, a very vibrant sort of artsy town. And
Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Okay, cool. Can you hear my voice? Anybody? Check, check, check. Check,
Okay.
check.
This might be working here. Hey there, Dennis. Are we all set up?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. If you can hear us, I think we solved the IT dilemma to some degree. Yeah. Let's make sure Carla and I.
The Free State Project being largely populated by nerds and IT people who are able to move because their job is just on the internet.
Yes.
Yes, sorry for the technical failures. Please, if someone was listening, come back. According to our audience here, everyone can now see and hear us.
Yeah. Dennis, are you able to see how many people are on? I think we had 11 people earlier, so we had at least some interest. Like 100 people looked at the thing, so.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can see if anyone has asked a question, Dennis, for some reason our comments thing isn't coming up, so.
Okay, the first comments I see are for when you messaged me, and I did see a thing that in the list of commands that was like /users. I assume that would say that shows well, Nick L, 2 other Nicks, and a Nick A.
Hey,
So,
Nickies. Unless it's like 4 guys at the NSA who are really uncreative and coming up with their usernames. But, well, Dennis, why don't you talk about what you've done in the Free State Project so far? What you kind of...
So yeah, I was one of the first people to get here. I was, oh gosh, I was in, I think, July of 2005
Wow.
or 4. So I did go to the first Pork Fest, not Pork Fest 0, because we started at 0, because I mentioned we're a lot of geeks. And let's see. I fairly quickly got involved with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, whose shirt I'm wearing. And one of the things that they did was have us just kind of go to the state house. I lived in pretty close to Concord, and just sit in on the hearings and sort of got familiar with the process. So Liberty Alliance has formed a lot of what I've done since getting here, since landing.
And we have a lot, because there's 400 state house members, and like 100 of them have an A rating from the NHLA. And for you, if anyone from Granite State Progress is watching, you don't have to wet your pants. They're not all free staters, but that kind of shows that the NHLA has done 2 great things. It's like, one is to score legislators on how libertarian they are, and the other, I think, is to incentivize a lot of people who think they're libertarians to vote more libertarian, because not everyone knows what voting libertarian necessarily means, and to have some kind of policy wonks going at it at the NHLA is good.
Here's what I've seen. Look, how did pretty much anybody who didn't have hippie libertarian parents, how does anyone become libertarian? They hear those arguments over and over again in different settings. It's like any other kind of advertising. You got it this way and that way, and from multiple independent sources enough times to where it clicks and you internalize it, and there's inception happens and it's your idea, right? So I've seen that over time take effect with a lot of the House of Representatives. There's a big faction that are just very ideologically statist, and they're not going anywhere. But the vast majority of, frankly, of the Republicans were always kind of, milquetoast Republicans. Both them and certainly a wing of the Democratic Party as well. When they've seen our arguments over and over, at first from us sitting on sort of the public side of the table during the various hearings and so forth, and then as we got elected, hearing it on the other side of the table as well. So they're getting these libertarian messages, not always with, hi, I'm a libertarian and here's what I think, but just, here, I'm yet another person, either your peer on the committee or someone asking questions that your peer on the committee is lobbing softballs to. to sort of drive those points home. And then one of the things that the Liberty Alliance does, we produce a voting recommendation sheet for the legislators, which we call the gold standard, that gives a nice, and it's perfect, it's really legislator friendly. We're very mindful of information and the importance of getting our message across. So it's, here are the votes that you're going to be doing, in the order you're going to be doing them. Here's the motion that's going to be on the table, and we think you should go yay or nay on that motion. And some bullet points. Here's why. Here's the libertarian argument for that. Not necessarily for every bill, but for everything that we've analyzed and determined that there really is a pro-liberty vote that you can do here. And here's our suggestion. And those have really taken off. And I've seen people.
Certainly plenty of disagreements, and there's not anything close to 100% consensus as to what the libertarian vote always is. I know certainly with the casino gambling bill, there are kind of a lot of people I know in the Free State Project who are on both sides of that. Some people say I was kind of pro casino gambling, but maybe like 2/3 or 3/4 people were like, well, this is a horrible monopoly, and I completely got their argument. So it was a really an interesting, nuanced kind of debate, and there's definitely a few issues where there's not necessarily consensus, I think, among how that libertarianism translates into policy.
Which is honestly part of what makes it really exciting here, right? Is you get people who are wonks, you get people who are intellectuals. Not everyone's into politics. Other people are into like building family structures or alternate giving structures like shire sharing, or doing the Uber protests or whatever. But there's always like a lively intellectual debate about stuff, and I've gotten to the stage really we're slightly spoiled here. Like, I listen to a lot of libertarian sort of podcasts, and sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, that's so elementary. We're so far beyond that, because instead of just the academic or the, oh, wouldn't it be great if this happened? It's like, we're actually doing it, and we're confronting these issues every day from an actual practical living liberty perspective.
Oh, I've come to have such I have a no tolerance policy for masturbating for freedom. I can't tolerate that at all. Either you're doing something specific, real, and positive with a goal in mind, or you're just talking.
Yeah, and we all tend to, even here disagree. Like you said, something like the gambling bill. I know, Dennis, you've been, fairly skeptical about certain kinds of civil disobedience. I kind of take the big approach, the sort of big, big umbrella thing, where I believe, basically what we're creating in New Hampshire is it's a marketplace for ideas. We believe in competition. I think the politicos and the, people just doing things like the Rights Brigade that goes out and does FIJA, fully informed jury information outreach. Every time there's a call to the courts, they go out every other week, that kind of stuff. We don't really know quite yet which thing is going to work, which one's going to stick, which one's the best, but we know over time that we're going to have a pretty good sense. And, for me personally, I love technology. I love the internet. I think the fact that the ideas of liberty are spreading as fast as they are, and globally. I mean, I get the weirdest friend requests, and they're not always just from Nigerian princes who want me to send them money.
I do have a concern with that global movement, though, just because there have been so many. Like, I think of the 1960s, and the movement was global. It, flawed as it may have been, I guess in some ways it was very successful in that so much of our policy today is this sort of socialist ideal. But they never really brought about totally the society, I think, that they had in mind. I would be very concerned that this tide of more people getting involved with liberty ideas and it kind of coming and going and washing away. I don't think we can take for granted that it's on the upswing, and I don't think we can take it for granted that it will eventually, any particular place, get to some kind of critical mass where you get that hockey stick effect, where you set the chain reaction on fire.
But but I mean, I agree and disagree, because I'm like, either you're telling me I'm wasting my time, or we're going to be the hockey stick, right? I mean, really what we're trying to do is to build that beacon. So if you look at what we've done with less than 2,000 movers, I think like the next 5 to 10 years in New Hampshire is going to be the most exciting scene in terms of liberty, possibly in history. I mean, there have been different revolutions, and most of them have been violent, and I think that's not the way to go. I think where we're at an actual crossroads where it's going to be an intellectual revolution based on technology, based on disruptive technology. Because, I was watching a council meeting the other day, and I think it was out of Texas. We have some good friends down in Texas, a lot of signers from there, and it was this room with, their little horseshoe platform, and there were like 8 people sitting behind the desks, and they were like, we're going to write on this piece of paper, and now everyone's going to do what we say. And in the interim, people are like, but I have an app, and Uber is easier than a taxi, or Lyft is better than Uber, or whatever it is. Even the fact that we couldn't get my laptop to work, which I'm pretty sure is the NSA. I had just peeled off my ACLU thing off my camera. So,
it's the Bureau of Sabotage.
But I think the combination of these ideas plus technology is actually before our eyes making government redundant. Absolutely.
You mentioned Texas. One of my favorite Free State stories is about Texas related. So a few years ago, there was a very large push, sort of a state sovereignty nullification type push, particularly that came through New Hampshire. A resolution was drafted that would, in essence, say, here and no further, if any of the following triggers happen, most of which have already happened.
HCR 6, I remember
yes.
that. I was there in my pink coat and minus 15.
We had hundreds and hundreds of people, many of them armed for what it's worth, but hundreds and hundreds of people with, basically demanding secession from the Union. And we had a bill that would effectively not like instantly secede from the Union, but basically start the process. Being voted on and being called up in a special session to be voted on like immediately first thing because of the hundreds of protesters on the lawn making other business impossible with their noise. I mean, there was sort of a full stage coup going on.
And it passed, right? Didn't you get that thing through?
No, it did fail. I'm a little bit miffed at some of the strategic stuff that was done. I think we could have done better if we'd had a little more balls, but the point being, hey, this is when we didn't have as many legislators as we do now.
Or as many movers, or as many locals and natives who are awakening and saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, now someone's got my back.
Well, so 6 months later, it's the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance's yearly sort of dinner, right? Their fundraiser. And some of the guests that we had were state legislators from the Texas legislature. And they kind of took me aside after we were talking. They said, God, you guys were serious. I mean, we have plenty of people who will make the speech, but when I'm talking to you guys, and there were New Hampshire legislators who were staunch proponents of the resolution, who were not Free Staters, who were there, and they were saying, yes, we're ready to go. And this was just, the guys in Texas were just, it's one thing to talk about it, but you guys are ready to go. You're ready to leave the Union. And I think the level of it's not just talk, things are actually happening, is maybe a little bit surprising to those who aren't already here.
Yeah, and I think as we, move towards triggering the move, things will become more exciting. I also think it's important to, think about how we can build alliances within the state. As you said, with that particular case, it was, and when I say we, once again, like I think Dennis, me, and Andrew are kind of here, wearing our own hats. There's lots of stuff that floats my boat that, has nothing to do with the actual organization itself. And that's an important distinction, because I feel like people within the state tend to get really confused about that. They want to sort of lump everyone under this, that we're an organization and we're doing these things. We're not. We believe in individualism. We don't believe in collectivism. There is no, in fact, my entire job is calculated laissez-faire. I don't tell people what to do. I do what I want. People do what they want, you know, and that's the beauty of it. Like, you know, we're not quite sure, but somehow with all these different people doing all these different things, we are going to have a very exciting and very unique future. And if for people who are passionate about liberty, I've lived all over the world. I'm from South Africa originally. I could live anywhere I want, and I don't. I choose to live here, and I choose to do this because, not only because I'm passionate about it, because it's fun.
It is so fun. It is. People have no idea the amount of fun you can have. They really don't. The recreational activism is better than the skiing. It really is. It's all year long.
Well, and that's the other thing. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, New Hampshire as a place to live, it's pretty damn awesome. It wins best quality of living consistently. It beats Hawaii.
Healthiest kids, I think, and richest state on earth, I think. We just got the richest.
Yeah, actually, the Mises, on one of their blogs, they did a analysis, and, you know, I've heard mixed things about the data, but, you know, I'm not a numbers girl, and I understand headlines. So, you know, according to that, they said that New Hampshire would be the wealthiest state in the developed world, beating out Switzerland, Luxembourg, and I think it was Norway, but it was one of the Scandinavian countries. And that's a huge deal. You know, you see a quality of living here that is different to other places. You know, you don't commonly see homeless people on the streets. You don't commonly, you know, just sort of see, even if you go up to Maine. I love going to Portland, Maine. I'm a foodie. We have some work to do on the food scene here in New Hampshire, but it's
hey, there are multiple Indian restaurants within easy driving distance of my home, and my home is like in the middle of the woods compound. So
that's true, but it's a good Indian.
Oh yeah, yeah. I used to live in San Francisco, and I can tell you this is not quite as good as the best in San Francisco, but it's still good.
Yeah, and it is, and it's actually honestly picking up as well. And you're right. Actually, I had fantastic, like, well, I used to live in Chinatown in New York, so I would say my standards are pretty high.
Yeah.
But I went for dim sum on Saturday, and I had a pretty awesome meal.
Also,
like,
people sometimes forget how small New England is. So you could drive to Boston if you want to go out on a big dinner date.
Right.
From Manchester to Boston, if you leave later in the evening without traffic, is what, an hour?
Yeah, a little short of an hour.
Hour or less.
And honestly, you know, if you're in Portsmouth up to Portland, Maine is less than an hour as well, and even from my house, probably under 2, and, you know, that has a great food scene. But if you compare, you know, sort of a place like Vermont or Maine to New Hampshire, and you know, going back to that sort of 60s idea, right, where, you know, the hippies kind of went to Vermont, but Vermont has the most liberal, in the old-fashioned sense, gun laws, right? And New Hampshire is a close second in terms of, you know, it's a shell issue state, you can open carry, all of that good stuff. But when you go to a place like Portland, Maine, which should, you know, you can see the socialism, you can see the bums on the street and the homeless, and you don't really see that much here because, you know, this is a prosperous state, and for the most part, the policies are pretty pro-freedom, pro-market, and all of that. There's work to be done, though. You know,
I see the local economy here really is inherently, intrinsically, very agorist. If you are in any small to medium-sized New Hampshire town, the vast majority of places, everybody's got a mom and pop something. They're doing some kind of auto home repairs, heating oil, wood stuff, like all these kind of things that you just need, like snow removal, all the things that you just need living in New Hampshire. People are out there doing that, providing, and of course, the most beautiful thing ever, so many of our towns have multiple competing private trash pickup. Yeah. Where else do you get that? You have, you know, my local town, right, we have a pay-by-bag thing, which if you're going to have municipal garbage pickup, I like the fact that it's not a broad-based tax. You're just paying for the stuff that you dispose of and the cost of disposing it, kind of market there. And then I have, right where I live, multiple different companies that are competing for the service to pick up my trash and take it to that municipal dump. And I save money. I just drive it there myself. So, you know, pretty
And
quick market.
you know, with the snow removal as well, I mean, it's Super Secret Project, who's done some really great rap songs about New Hampshire. You know, they like to say it's always great to know a plow guy.
In January, it is good to know a plow guy. What's up, guy? It's our way to say hi. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and I guess one thing I kind of want to address, because it comes up so frequently when, you know, when people are finding out about the Free State Project in New Hampshire and stuff. So it's so cold thing. So from my perspective, you know, I'm from Africa, so if you think it's cold, I think it's colder. And honestly, you come to embrace it, you know. And the other thing I think people should keep in mind is, for some people, snowbirding really is an option. You know, if you're just someone who's maybe a little older, or, you know, just honestly hates the snow, something to get back to disruptive technologies again, like Airbnb has totally changed that game as well. So, you know, if we're looking at a little market that we're creating with 20,000 people coming in, let's say, you know, you have some money, you want to buy a house here, but you don't want to stick around for the winters. There are so many options that are going to open up as we have new movers come in. So, you know, if you want to go down to, you know, God forbid, Florida, but maybe somewhere even better, Puerto Rico, or, you know, somewhere else, you know, there are options. Like, we're going to figure out all these free market options. And I think people should also think about what we're building here as, wow, you know, we have this sort of captive customer base. Like, what can you bring? What can you give people? How can you come up with something?
Well, this is blowing my mind. It's in the last few years, it has become possible, because of the number of free staters, to make businesses that just serve the needs of free staters, which blows my mind. I never realized this would happen, but like, I just had the roof of my house redone, which kind of sucks. Like, the roof gets old and you have to spend a lot of money putting a new one on. But, you know, I happened to run into a free stater who has this roofing company. He was like, oh yeah. And so I'm talking to the guy, and he says, yeah, he spends the majority of his time, like, he doesn't have enough time for muggles, as he says. Like, you know, he would take anyone's money, but his plate is just full with free staters' work. So,
I mean, you know, I just recently bought my first house, and I was talking to my real estate agent, Mark Warden, who was a two-term state rep. You know, he didn't run again. We all wanted him to. It wasn't like he even lost, you know.
But it was so awesome having him in particular on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee, and an anarchist on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. Just wow. Hearts and minds, baby.
And we need more than that. You know, we need more of that. You know, there's you know, asset forfeiture is kind of a subject that's very hot right now, because as people start to look at police brutality and then police homicides, and, you know, just kind of go down that line.
When it comes to police, I love the license plate scanning thing, because that's uniquely New Hampshire. It is against the law for the state of New Hampshire to use automated license plate scanners. They can use the little cameras at the toll booth to see, like, if you haven't paid your toll. But it's very, very
red light
clear.
cameras either. It's against state law for any town to do a red light cameras. In fact, Salem, New Hampshire, where I live, had tried to do red light cameras. They put them up, but then the state legislature passed that law, so they have these red light cameras up that can't do anything.
And of course,
and actually, Real ID, also kind of uniquely New Hampshire. Like, it's one of the handful of last states that that have, you know, put.
And the federal government is ready to play chicken on that one again. This session, they are saying, New Hampshire, you're going to need a U.S. passport if you want to get on a plane boarding from Manchester Airport, because your IDs don't count. And we've played chicken with them before. The best thing that could happen is for the federal government to stop accepting New Hampshire IDs, because +1 score, yes, we're this much closer to being Hong Kong.
Exactly. And also, I mean, I would recommend for anyone who is a liberty lover in any event is get a passport. Like, you don't want to be in a situation where you need it and you don't have it.
Yeah.
You know, have it so that, you know, if we, worst case scenario, have some kind of zombie apocalypse,
Think of all
you
the
have
people.
options.
Think of all the people around the world whose states don't let them leave, who are like, "You can leave. Why don't you just get a passport?" No, but I mean,
So I recommend that everyone get a passport and a visa to Somalia. But yeah, you know, there are many, many, many things that are so awesome about New Hampshire, but I think ultimately it's the community. So do either of you have like a favorite Pork Fest story?
Yeah, I mean, sure. So let's see, Pork Fest this year. Well, yeah, I'll just tell a Pork Fest story because mine aren't as interesting as the big one. So this year they had a tax collector came by, who I guess I didn't even know these positions still existed, but the tax collector showed up at Pork Fest. So
this was New Hampshire State Revenue Department.
Yeah, New Hampshire State tax collector, and he just was going around trying to ask people questions. And as soon as he showed up, about like 100 people with video cameras, you know, started filming him and just asking him questions. And then the owner of the campground told him he had to leave because he didn't have a warrant, and probably, you know, they don't need warrants. They're super magical government people, but he eventually was pretty much just forced out because he couldn't do his job. And so that's, you know, exactly, that's what we want. We want the government to not be able to do its job oppressing us.
Well, right, and there was a really, you know, in motion example of safety in numbers, which is part of what we're doing also, I think, as a movement, right? It's kind of nice to be around people who have the same sort of values and ideals and stuff, and, you know, whether we always agree on everything, you know, that was a situation where they rolled in. The second they rolled in, you know, the equivalent of a Pork 411 went out on the campground. At least 8 people showed up with video cameras. They were all immediately recording. The campground owner, you know, is an ally, and he's someone, we've been doing Pork Fest there now for many years. And when I met Crosby, well, the first year I organized Pork Fest was in 2009. He was still kind of like super pro-war, neo-conny guy. And over the years, I have just seen him with the same as what you were saying, Dennis. You know, if people hear the arguments, if they're intellectually truthful, and if we're rational and logical, then eventually our arguments must persuade, because either we're right or we're wrong. And I've seen that actual evolution even just with Crosby. And so when, you know, they came in and he heard, and he was like, no, send them to my office. And he had I'm not even sure what he told them, but let's just say they left and they did not come back.
Like, there's a great thing with, I was talking about this bar we were protesting outside of in Portsmouth. And so you'd think, okay, we're protesting this bar, explicitly trying to get them to make less money. All the bar people should be like furious. That's kind of the point, a little antagonistic. But actually, like, the bouncer who was on that night was really buying our stuff. You know, loved what we had to say. It was like, yeah, you know, this is my job. This is why I'm here. But I love you guys. You know, this is
And I think really, as you know, we should always be thinking about what are those issues where we can find common ground. I mean, I found it's not a manifesto, but it was like a poster about Real ID that was down in the Cool's basement, and one of the signatories on that document was Susan the Bruce. So there are actually things that we agree on.
Susan the Bruce being a local New Hampshire person who definitely does not like the Free State Project, libertarians. Anyone talking about smaller government is clearly an evil, dangerous person, and she's very prolific in the local editorials.
She's good on weed, though. She wrote a good weed editorial the other day. I'll give her that.
Well, and that's a really important point. It is super critical to meet people issue by issue and to never, ever make it personal. It's never that you're bad and stupid because you don't agree with me. It's, here's another issue where, if we have a nonviolent approach to the problem, everyone is going to come out ahead. And that message over and over on that one issue where you catch someone, we had the most statist people, particularly on Real ID. A lot of the privacy issues, we do get a very broad. Everyone kind of, especially here in New Hampshire, the privacy thing is very well respected across across the spectrum. At one time that you meet with, or you know what, same-sex marriage was another huge one. We made a lot of connections with when people say, "Oh my God, I thought libertarians were just Republicans who smoke dope," but they're with us on all these other issues. So like we're being against monopolies and
New Hampshire Democrats like guns. They're very different. So, for instance, in Massachusetts, the Republicans in Massachusetts are like way, if you want to buy into this left-right thing where the left is anti-gun and the right's pro-gun, they're like way to the left of the New Hampshire Democrats. The Massachusetts Republicans are way more anti-gun than the New Hampshire Democrats. The New Hampshire Democrats are very hesitant to put any sort of gun control legislation. Like some of the big ones who are aspiring to be national politicians, like Hassan, will make anti-gun comments, but anyone who's a local Democrat politician very seldom touches the Second Amendment.
Go ahead, Dennis. Sorry.
A solid block of the Democratic Party in New Hampshire, they're strongly pro-gun, and they're against any kind of broad-based or income tax.
Yeah, but also to get back to the gun stuff, I did this panel discussion with the Department of Homeland Security for New Hampshire, Police Chief of Dover. It was J.R. Hull, who's a state representative, who's a native, but who's well aligned, sort of, I think, philosophically with the libertarian platform.
He's undergone the process of radicalization that we have inflicted on so many of our natives.
It was an interesting discussion. Initially, I thought that it was students who were thinking about becoming lawyers in the broad sense of the word, but it turned out that they were mostly people who were going to become cops and prosecutors. So I may not have been the flavor of the day at that debate, but there were two things that really struck me. The one was that everyone in that room, regardless, was like, "Oh no, you can't touch gun issues in this state." Like they all knew and understood that. And then my little subliminal moment of awesomeness was that the head of the Department of Homeland Security in New Hampshire is a former Dover police chief, and he's double dipping on his pension. And I found a newspaper report that had that as the headline on the Seacoast Online. So I printed that out in very large font, and it was on top of the stack of all my research. And I made sure I sat next to him, and every time he said something, I just started elbowing the newspaper article over, and he got so flabbergasted that he was just tied up.
We have a question that's been posed to us, our first question of the night. Is there an anti-FSP group? So why don't we all kind of chime in with an answer?
Oh God, yes, and I support them. I do, because frankly, there have been a lot of cases where libertarians have acted rudely and insensitively to quote.
But now you're collectivizing, Dennis.
Whatever. A lot of there have been individuals who have acted rudely and insensitively, if I may quote war games, and there's been blowback, no doubt about that.
But the thing is, these groups shouldn't be anti-FSP, right? We should say, here are...
You're telling someone how they should feel. Don't do that. Don't tell someone how they should feel.
I assume you're talking about Free Keene, or Stop Free Keene, right? Is that kind of what you're going at with that?
Pretty much. I mean, there's certainly people who are
they've been very careful to say we're actually not anti-FSP, although sometimes they'll kind of slip and say that. But theoretically, Stop Free Keene is saying we're just against Free Keene and we're not against the free
sort of theoretically, but look, if Hamas blows up a hospital, okay, and then like you get some, if the government of the relevant country doesn't say we absolutely cannot, we repudiate these actions, then they're silently complicit, right? So
that is 100% absolute status bullshit.
Doesn't matter. That's how people feel. When people say they're against the FSP in New Hampshire, typically, it's sophistry to try to explain to them, oh, well, actually, we're different groups and blah, blah. That's not what they see.
But that is what individualism is. That is how it should work.
Oh, I agree with you. I just don't think that you can tell people how to feel.
And denounce everyone's individual actions.
I feel like I have to step in here with, are we answering the person's question of, is there an anti-FSP group? Because that's kind of why I made the main comment, where I don't think there's technically an anti-FSP group. There's Stop Free Keene, which might be thought of as the main anti-FSP group.
This is true. There's not like a statewide. There's Granite State Progress.
State Progress. Yeah, they're the big. They're not officially like opposed to the Free State Project as an essence of their being, but pretty much.
Well, actually, and in their credit, to their credit, they're the biggest club that they have to beat Free Staters over the head with, which I think is correct, and they should. And Free Staters better learn from this. There have been some Free Staters who purposefully either basically lied when they were asked when they were running for office, like, are you a member of the Free State Project? They said no. They got elected, and then it was found out that they were members of the Free State Project, and that really is.
Hey, Dennis, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? I mean, it's the same thing.
If you can't say, like, yes, I am. I'm a member of this group, and these are my beliefs.
I don't know if I want to give our opponents more ammo, but technically they weren't lying because we're participants.
Oh, for heaven's sake! No, that's the kind of sophistry that is incredibly anti-productive. You have to own up to it. You have to say, yes, I'm a member of this group. Here's what I think. Here's what I feel, and this is why I'm doing this. And I think it's for the good of the whole community.
But
most people will be okay with that.
Participants, and I personally think that we have nothing to be ashamed of, and I think people should say they're Free Staters. But you know what? It's not for you. You can make a recommendation. You can make an argument.
Don't even. No, seriously, I can't tell you how much bad you're doing right now, Carla. You particularly need to be able to say it is not proper, good, or moral to lie when a voter who wants to know more about you as a candidate are asking you if you're a Free Stater. If your answer is no, you are lying, and you need to absolutely repudiate the idea that someone, in a member of the organization of which you are president, Carla, you damn well better repudiate that kind of behavior.
Have you now, or are you ever been a member of the Communist Party? I don't subscribe to that.
Some people think it's okay to lie in politics.
What? Only Free Staters must be honest politicians.
I'm saying, if someone asks you, and you're, if you're running for public office and someone asks you point blank, you damn well should tell the truth. If you can't accept that as an obvious yes, I mean, are you also for like raping small puppies? Come on, Carla.
Oh, geez.
Let me stand up for the undefendable with lying in politics. Now, I'm not a politician and don't pretend to be a political advisor, but I think lying in self-defense is like one thing, so maybe there's a broader NAP argument there.
Well, like, are you hiding slaves in the basement is a different question from are you a Free Stater?
I would not personally tell that lie. I also do not know of specific instances. I have heard rumors of
Max Abramson.
What?
Max Abramson.
So he's the guy who apparently...
Yes, this is the individual that Granite State Progress points to and says, look at the tactics that these people are doing. So you, as a person of this in the group, really need to be able to say, no, that's not really good behavior. We, as a group, disavow that kind of behavior.
Do they have membership cards?
We do not have membership cards. We do not have membership fees. We do not have members. We have participants who sign the pledge, and that is the entire relationship between...
When a participant is running for public office and a voter in their district asks them, are you a participant in the Free State Project, don't you think he should tell the truth and say yes?
I think that is not for me to say. I think that if someone asked me that question, yes, I would. But I think we can move on to maybe more positive things because basically we have someone here who's like, hey, let's launder our dirty laundry and talk about anti-Free State Project groups.
Well, this is open source politics, baby.
Although at the same time, this is kind of, air and transparency. If you're moving to the Free State Project, there's all sorts of political drama, and yeah, you should maybe know about it. That if you're getting into politics, there's always a shitload of drama.
Indeed.
And as there, is within the Republican caucus, as there is within the Democratic Party, there's always some kind of scandal or some kind of situation
But I'll say
going
this, though,
on.
that Free Staters generally don't, when they don't fight about politics. Usually it's not like a political issue that's causing drama among the Free State
No,
community.
it's usually just personal.
It's personal crap. So usually there's no like civil wars over politics.
Which actually makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, I think one of the things that the state did for statism most successfully was to destroy social structures, so family structures, your church structures, your community structures, your private charities, your pooling of money to help the guy next door, and we're bringing that stuff back, right? It's small scale, but it's going to grow as we grow, and to some extent, even the personal drama. This is just my personal point of view, right? But I believe that if we move to a society that is free and voluntary, the only thing we're going to have is our reputations. And so so within our circles, as the drama sort of unfolds, it's really us trying to figure out how reputation is going to work. And because New Hampshire is small town, and because our community is still pretty small, the gossip mill is fairly healthy. And because we have tools now like Facebook where everyone can just pile in. So it's part of that sort of social experiment that I was talking about earlier, where we're on the cusp. We don't know. We haven't quite gotten the right reputation software yet. I mean, I'm hoping some platform that, doesn't give our private information away like Facebook, maybe Liberty.me, which is trying to do it, right? We'll have the reputation-based stars, and people can be like, yeah, you're kind of a dick. Like, I don't want to work with you. Or, this person's good on all these other things, but don't lend them money. Or it'll become nuanced, and I think we're still getting there.
Because we all have this mentality where you don't go to the police with your issues, So unless there's like very, very rare cases I could ever see people in our community doing that. And so when you can't go to the police with your issues, you have to develop your own shit. And sometimes it's messy, but it's like, what is that compared with the government? It's like, because it's a lot less messy than the government. Okay to retire to? Yeah, I mean, the one footnote maybe is,
the question.
Is New Hampshire okay to retire to? The one footnote is, if you have like a bad disability, the winters I know can be a little rough, especially if you're you don't have help around the house. So maybe if you're older and disabled, I would definitely think extra hard about your living situation with the winter, because we do have rough winters.
That said, we do have assisted living facilities here,
Yeah, that's true.
And, I mean, by way of example, and this might be a good wrap-up metaphor or something, we have early mover. She's mover number 50, had a tragic accident. She broke her back, and the community just rallied around her. We kind of figured out a way. People were like, how can we fundraise for her? And I was kind of like, can we fundraise for her and actually like create a job for her, because we have a lot of work and I can't do it all, and we're growing and all of that. And so Chris Lopez, who's our administrator, we kind of figured something out. Now she is, paralyzed from the waist down, and she manages winters here. It's not always easy. I would say to retirees and older people, we have had a surprising lot, actually, of people have moved to New Hampshire to retire. Former board members, someone like Kathleen Converse, who was our treasurer for several years, who actually, and this is another beautiful story, was by happenstance just as a voter, who was on the rolls to be in a jury pool, ended up on a jury that nullified a white Rastafarian's marijuana in his backyard. That guy was like, look, this is my religion. I'm not going to take a plea. I'm going to take it all the way to court. The morning of that hearing, the state was like, all we need is you have to plead guilty. We're not going to give you any time, anything. And he was like, no, apparently you don't understand what principles are. Like, I'm not just saying this for the sake of saying it. I actually fundamentally believe this. And he took it to trial, and she was on that jury. And she said the beautiful part for her there was she was not the first person who said, hey, what's this jury nullification they were talking about? It was a young woman who was on the jury, and she said her role was to be able to explain what that was, and that way the jury was able to nullify it. And so Kathleen was a retiree. We have a lot of people who do come here and retire.
20,000 people is 1 out of every 3 juries in New Hampshire, by the way, if you do the math. So as much as the political impact of 20,000 isn't majority-wise enough, but in terms of juries, you can pretty much shut down the whole system.
Well, that story is a fantastic one about the network effects that you get, because it was because there were Free Staters who were active on the jury nullification thing several years before that New Hampshire had recently passed a bill asserting a defendant's right to discuss jury nullification with the jury as part of their defense, and then that a Free Stater would happen to be on the jury of someone who realistically is just growing pot and smoking it in their backyard with no defense other than religious exemption. And that person is now free and able to grow and smoke whatever he's growing on his own property purely because it's his religion.
Yep.
And I think, Dennis, that hits the nail on the head. You know, we obviously have had some heated discussion and disagreement, but in the end, I mean, you can take case study after case study of these examples where it's like, you know, someone's jam is to go hand out flyers at 8 a.m. in the morning. Not my jam. Someone else's jam is to run for office. Someone else's jam is to, you know, write a bill. And as we grow, we're going to get those reinforcements, and then we can go back to something like the HCR 6. We can start to go back to these other ideas. Maybe something didn't work the first time. Maybe it was a little early. But, you know, we're all putting building blocks in place to eventually move towards this concept of a freer society, a more peaceful society, a more prosperous society, and a more voluntary society. Because frankly, if we can't evolve as human beings to get beyond the state, and to get beyond the state of forcing people to do things that they don't want, if we can't persuade them, what the hell are we doing?
And we're to a point, even now, where there are so many Free Staters in New Hampshire that anyone I talk to in New Hampshire about, you know, ideas and what we ought to do as a society, and at some point you can lay in there, you know, you probably know more than one of us that you don't know is one of us. Someone you trust is one of us.
And on that note,
granted state progress. We're everywhere. Nowhere. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Carla.
Sure.
I think we're off.